Solo Leveling by Gong. Chapter 47 Uninvited Guests. As the master of the top guild in Korea, Jong-in Choi was initially unhappy about the request from Jinchul to go to a C-rank gate. He even considered sending a strike squad with some high-rank hunters in his place. However, once he heard the details, he couldn't resist. Hunter Sung entered a double dungeon? A double dungeon was intriguing enough, but Hunter Sung was also involved. How many hunters, much less guild masters, wouldn't be excited? Jong-in postponed the raid he'd been preparing for and immediately summoned his elite hunters, as Jinchul had emphasized this was an urgent matter.
The association has asked for our cooperation. It seems we'll need to intervene,
the hunters murmured in hushed tones. The association had summoned them just as they were about to embark on an A-rank raid, so the gravity of the situation wasn't lost on them. They had also just heard the breaking news about what was happening in Japan, so they were feeling even more agitated.
What happened?
The question came from the second most influential member of the guild. Jong-in turned to the vice guild master.
I'm told a double dungeon was discovered in a C-rank gate.
A double dungeon? Hain blinked. A dungeon within a dungeon was certainly uncommon, but it didn't make much sense for the association to call on the Hunters Guild for a mere C-rank gate. Seeing her puzzlement, Jong-in explained further.
It looks like Hunter Jin Woo-sung is fighting something and they're alone. For Manager Wu to not act himself and call on us. What's the matter, Hunter Cha?
Her expression had transformed.
Nothing. Okay then. Hunter Sung should be fine on his own, but let's get going just in case.
Hain nodded, and the others hurriedly packed their bags. Their only luggage was their weapons, but they still needed to be stowed with the utmost care.
We're missing some.
Another hunter tapped the shoulder of the colleague doing the head count and pointed toward a corner of the room where a man was slumped on the ground in abject despair.
Suzuki? Leave him be. Oh, right.
The hunter understood right away. Suzuki was a Japanese hunter who had been recruited by Korea not too long ago. His eyes were glued to the news broadcast on his cell phone.
Let's go do our part. Got it.
The two hunters left Suzuki at the offices and got in one of the guild vans. One by one, the vehicles carrying the elite strike squad sped off to their destination.
Yikes! Hot! Hot!
The cigarette had fallen out of the startled Kim's hand. It landed on the sand, so there was no need to put it out. The way he aggressively stomped on the bud, though, spoke to his emotional state. Still, this was no time to vent one's frustrations on some stupid cigarette. Kim's gaze turned back to the parked vans. He'd been so busy noting that every person emerging from the vehicles was an elite member of the Hunters Guild that he hadn't initially felt the cigarette ashes falling on his fingers. Jong-in Choi, Hain Cha, and Jeongo Yoon? Even Kahun Sun? The top dogs of the Hunters Guild had gathered in this location. To think he'd stumbled on this galaxy of stars after following Jinchul on a whim. Strangely, the gate in question was only a C rank. Kim's mouth went dry. He couldn't even begin to imagine what was going on inside. Manager Wu was usually forthcoming about these matters, but as even he was keeping tight-lipped, Kim had been unable to do much except chain smoke to calm his nerves. All the butts he discarded had formed a small mound at his feet. Jinchul paid no attention to the yearning gaze of the reporter and hurriedly approached Jong-in. Like Jinchul earlier, the latter couldn't tear his eyes away from the gate.
Holy shit! What the fuck? What is that thing?
Jong-in couldn't stem the tide of the curses from spilling unconsciously from his mouth. Jinchul possessed exceptionally sharp senses for a brawler, but Jong-in was Korea's most powerful mage. When it came to detecting the flow of magic energy, He was only behind Yunho Beck with his eyes of a beast and Jin Woo-sung's supernatural level of perception.
Can you handle it?
That's how Jinchul framed his question, but Jongin heard the unspoken, "I cannot," he replied grimly.
You said Hunter Sung was inside?
Affirmative. Jongin nodded slowly. Who else would be? Better yet, who else would be capable of taking on an enemy emitting this much mana?
Is he trying to single-handedly save the planet or something?
Jongin blurted out. Jinchul sympathized with a tired nod. It sounded quite plausible to him.
Whether we can handle it or not, we still need to go in there. We owe it to Hunter Sung.
If the combined might of Jin Woo-sung and the Hunters Guild couldn't tackle this, then no one else in Korea could. In other words, if they couldn't stop the beasts here, the country was screwed. What was that? Did they say Hunter Sung? Kim, who was doing his best to eavesdrop from a distance, picked up Jinwoo's name, and his eyes became as wide as a rabbit's. Hunter Sung is in there? Kim stared at the gate before he hastily scanned the area. Besides 2 S-rank hunters, there were a sizable number of ranks, in addition to Hunter Sung already inside. My notepad? Where's my notepad? Smelling a huge scoop, he rushed to find his notebook. From this point on, he couldn't afford to miss a single word uttered or the smallest event transpiring here. Everyone else was preoccupied with what was going on in Japan. This opportunity was like manna from heaven, a once-in-a-lifetime exclusive involving 3 S-rank hunters and the Hunters Association. Is that why Manager Wu wouldn't give me a quote earlier? Hunter Sung's information was classified, so he was a VIP under special supervision by the Hunters Association. No wonder Manager Wu had stayed mum. The elite strike squad finished their preparations as Jinchul and Jongin ended their conversation. The tanks picked up their defensive gear, the damage dealers grabbed their weapons, and the healers equipped themselves with magic tools charged with mana. They were ready as quickly and efficiently as one would expect from the top guild in the country. Jongin exchanged looks with Hain and nodded. Hain nodded back to let him know that her inspection of the squad was done. They were good to go. The elite members of the surveillance team had completed their preparations earlier. Jinchul reviewed some information from a subordinate and then turned to face the others with a solemn expression.
Let's move out.
They had a long way to go. The hunters sped down the tunnel, but they didn't run. Although they were all high rank, not everyone could move at the same speed. Hain was especially fast, but when she tried to dash ahead, Jongin grabbed her by the wrist.
What are you going to do alone, Hunter Cha?
Jongin understood her desire to rescue Jinwoo, but haste would endanger everyone.
Some of us can't keep up with you, and we'll be at a disadvantage if we try to push ourselves.
With a sullen expression, Hain moved to the rear of the group. Seeing her reaction, Jinchul mumbled under his breath.
So the rumor is true, then. Excuse me?
Jinchul quickly dismissed Jongin's query.
Oh, no, it's nothing.
Jongin raised an eyebrow before facing forward. The sinister mana was coming from that direction, so they had to stay alert. Jongin thought about Hunter Sung being in the same position they were. I hope we aren't too late. There wasn't much else they could do for him at this point but move swiftly, keep their wits about them, and pray for his safety. They couldn't let the stress cloud their minds. Jongin made conversation with Jinchul to ease the tension he felt.
How did Hunter Sung end up going inside?
I don't know the details, but according to witnesses, Hunter Sung seemed to already be aware that this gate had a double dungeon. Jongin's forehead wrinkled.
Any ideas on the matter? No, but something doesn't feel right.
Oh,
I've done my share of research on Hunter Sung.
Jongin was a guild master, and one of his duties was to recruit high-level hunters. For obvious reasons, he had shown a great deal of interest in Jin Woo.
There was a similar incident near here.
Jinchul himself had overseen the investigation, so he knew exactly what Zhang was talking about. About 6 months ago, Jin Woo had entered a double dungeon. And here he was again, seeking out another after all this time. Those who knew of both incidents had a hard time brushing this off as mere coincidence. As Jinchul predicted, Zhang brought it up.
Double dungeons are rare enough that most barely see one in their lifetime. Yet, Hunter Sung has crossed paths with 2 of them. Not only that, but he also went looking for the second. Isn't that odd?
Jinchul didn't answer. Just as Zhang alluded, much about Jin Woo was shrouded in mystery. The double dungeon, his reawakening, his unique abilities. But one thing was certain. The Hunters Association, heck, all of Korea, desperately needed Jin Woo Sung. That was why Jinchul had asked the Hunters Guild for help right away without waiting for clearance from his superiors. Hunter Sung's safety was to be secured by any means necessary. There would be time to ask questions later. Rousing himself from his thoughts, Jinchul raised his head. We're here. It would have taken almost an hour for most hunters to arrive, but it only took about 10 minutes for the elite strike squad and surveillance team to travel the same distance on foot. The end of the tunnel was in sight.
I think that's it. Yes, I sense something.
Zhang froze as he registered a menacing presence. Thankfully, he could still sense Jinwoo's presence as well. Everything's fine as long as Hunter Sung is okay. Jinwoo's abilities combined with support from the elite hunters here should have been sufficient to handle whatever kind of magic beast was up ahead. Reassured, Zhang called out to the group,
"Let's hurry, everyone!"
The elite squad from the Hunters Guild and the association charged through the huge doorway resembling the entrance of an ancient castle. The sight that met them was unlike anything they'd ever laid eyes on.
What on earth? What the hell is this place?
There were countless broken stone statues littering the floor. Rubble was piled up throughout the room.
Oh, look!
One of the hunters pointed to a truly enormous statue of some unknown deity standing frozen in time, its hands interlocked in the middle of slamming the ground. Its head, with half its face blown off, caught their attention. Jinchul's heart began to race as he recalled the testimonies of the survivors from the previous double dungeon incident. They mentioned all this. The statue of a god, the other stone guardians, everything. They'd each reported the same thing. This place was occupied by a monstrous statue that could vaporize a C-rank hunter with one look, as well as innumerable stone statues whose movements could not be followed with the naked eye. The entire area was scarred by an epic battle that had recently taken place here. Wait, where is Hunter Sung? With the threats neutralized, their priority was to confirm Hunter Sung's status. Zhang eventually spotted him farther into the room.
He's over there.
Jin Woo was lying quietly on his back, as if asleep, just below the fists of the Colossus.
Hunter Sung!
Hain raised both her arms to stop the hunters about to rush to his aid. Dead in their tracks, Jinchul impatiently turned to look at her, and noticed how sweaty her face seemed.
Hunter Cha!
She bit her lower lip.
There's something over there.
It was then that a certain stone statue kneeling next to Jin Woo slowly raised itself up. The wings on its back were shredded, and it was missing an arm.
I don't remember inviting humans in here.
The angel statue stood up straight and, having scanned the intruders, grinned.
Ah.
The hunters were rendered speechless. Zhang didn't know what to say, but he was sure of one thing. This living statue was the source of the ominous energy he'd been feeling this entire time. The mana radiating from it was so strong that the space around it looked distorted. Jongen's entire body had goosebumps even as he gazed upon the statue from a distance. He peeked at Jin Woo. Considering his opponent was such a being, he understood why Jin Woo was lying unconscious on the ground. He also understood that only Jin Woo could have destroyed all the other statues, while simultaneously contending with the angel. Jongen was impressed beyond belief. And now it's up to us. A big drop of sweat dripped down the side of Jongen's face. He wasn't even sure whether this enemy was a magic beast, but it was definitely stronger than the monstrous ant from Jeju Island. Jongen swallowed with difficulty. Hain and Jinchul had turned pale. They, too, could feel the immense power of the being before them and were appropriately distraught. Meanwhile, the other hunters behind the trio were bowled over for another reason.
Did that thing just speak? I'm not hearing things, right? A magic beast that speaks our language?
The hunters exchanged looks of disbelief. They were witnessing the impossible. It was a well-established fact that intelligent magic beasts had their own language. When gates began to appear, people had tried learning their language, but their attempts failed due to the magic beasts' brutal natures. Those captured with much effort gradually went insane in the presence of the humans. Even when restrained, the beasts went berserk trying to kill their captors, not caring if they tore their own flesh or broke their own bones in the process. They eventually either mentally collapsed or were put out of their misery. Humans and magic beasts cannot coexist, and communication with them is impossible. This was the consensus among the scientific community that studied the creatures. Yet, here one stood, speaking Korean as if it was the most natural thing in the world. This magic beast could be considered the find of the century, but it filled the hearts of all the hunters with unexplainable dread. Their primal instinct sounded an alarm in each of them. As the statue took a step forward, the hunters took a trembling step back. The angel's gaze slowly scanned from left to right as if relishing the fear and panic on their faces.
Mighty humans, its eyes resembled those of a predator eyeing its next meal. You'll make a sufficient first offering for His Highness.
Would a smiling snake look this creepy? The hunters were immobilized by the sight. His Highness? Was there another magic beast? Jongen was puzzled, but he didn't have time to parse what the creature's words. The angel statue ripped the arm off one of the statues on the ground. Croc! What is it doing? The bewildered hunters got their answer when the angel placed the severed arm on its right shoulder, and the two parts melded together.
What the?
The angel leisurely stretched out its newly attached arm. Zoom. It appeared right in front of them. Before they could react, it threw a powerful punch with its new fist and crushed a hunter's face. Pow! Face crumpled, the hunter flew back and slammed into a wall. By the time his nearby colleagues attempted a counterattack, the angel had disappeared.
Where? Over there.
It had returned to its previous location, as if it hadn't moved at all. It wiggled its fingers. The test of its new hand had been successful.
My uncle! It knew!
The cries of the hunters confirmed they had a casualty. He died on the spot. An A-rank tank from the best guild in Korea had been killed with one blow. Jongen's eyes darted around in a panic. Hunter Sung fought this thing all by himself. Jongen was more concerned with trying to find a way out of this situation than dealing with the pain of losing his colleague. However, not everyone could handle it as objectively.
You son of a bitch!
One of the female hunters in the group was the deceased hunter's lover, and she charged the statue, enraged. In each hand burned a ball of fire. Before she could chuck them, though, someone grabbed her wrist. She turned her head to see Hain. She shook her arm and yelled at the S-rank hunter.
Let go of me! Please! You have to control yourself. I said let go. Rein it in.
The woman took a proper look at Hayne, who was biting her lower lip in grief.
I promise, I'm holding back too.
The grim look on Hayne's face gave the other woman pause. She was fully aware that since the magic beast had shown no further aggression following its first attack, it would be best not to provoke it. Still, she just couldn't stand there doing nothing when the beast had killed her beloved in such a gruesome manner. She quietly sobbed.
NGH.
When she was certain her colleague wasn't about to do anything rash, Hayne looked toward Jean Wu. She, too, was tamping down her anger. She had no idea why, but the magic beast had stopped attacking them, and Jean Wu was still breathing just fine. He looked peaceful, as if sleeping. At this point, the most they could do was buy time until Jean Wu recovered. At that moment, the angel statue finished its warm-up stretches and burst out laughing.
Uh-huh.
Its voice echoed in the empty lair as it focused on the hunters.
Time to have some fun.
Its eyes glowed red. Was it going to attack? The hunters tightened their grips on their weapons and braced for battle. With only one opponent, they might stand a chance. Their ranks included plenty of the best hunters in Korea, including 2 S ranks. Just as hope bloomed in their hearts. Rumble. The interior of the dungeon quaked.
Oh! Oh no!
A shadow of despair fell over the hunters' faces. One by one, the broken statues began to twitch. Statues without heads, statues with holes in their chests, and statues without arms or legs began hoisting themselves upright. But most worrisome of them all was the statue of the deity that could only be described as gargantuan.
Shit!
The statues rose to face their prey as if they had never been damaged. Their emotionless faces made them even more grotesque. The hunters retreated until they bumped into something.
Huh?
It was the door, which had firmly shut and locked while the hunters were distracted. The statues weren't going to let anyone out alive. The angel spoke up.
Those of you still standing after my puppets have fallen will have the opportunity to witness the glorious rebirth of the king.
It had mentioned the king earlier as well. What the hell is it talking about? Jinchul frowned. He couldn't understand what the monster was blabbering about, but he was certain of one thing. It planned to kill everyone here. He gritted his teeth. Jinchul had worked for the Hunters Association for 4 years and had survived numerous dangerous situations by fighting tooth and nail. That was his plan today. He had no intention of laying down and dying. But even if I don't make it, Hunter Sung had to survive. When he gazed at Jean Wu, the angel statue coincidentally waved its hand at Jean Wu at the same time.
This one took down my puppets in 5 minutes.
It then pointed a finger at the other hunters.
I wonder how long it will take for all of you to die.
As soon as the angel finished that sentence, Jinchul shouted,
Everyone duck!
The hunters swiftly followed his orders as a red laser swept over their heads. It had been close, but miraculously, there were no casualties. The beam coming from the Colossus slowly dissipated. Oh! The angel statue watched them with interest as it took a step back. They should prove amusing until the king opened his eyes.
Huff, huff, huff!
Jinchul was breathing hard and sweating profusely. He shuddered to consider what would have happened if he'd been less informed. They'd survived the first attack thanks to the testimonies provided by the previous survivors. But it wasn't over yet. No, this is just the beginning. Jinchul raised his head to see the statues advancing toward them. Had he not been a top A-rank hunter, he would have been unable to follow their movements. He jumped to his feet, wound up for a punch, and struck a statue with his specially made gauntlet. Kapow! His eyes widened. One strike should have been enough, but the statue was still standing. He'd assumed the statue's durability to be compromised due to its damaged shoulder, but he should have known better considering who'd caused said damage. The statue's head recoiled slightly, but it soon recovered from the impact and swung at Jinchel with its sword. TSK. Jinchel tooted to himself. He'd put his full power into that punch without considering a counterattack, and the statue's speed and proximity left him with no room to dodge. Kaboom! An explosion sent the approaching statue flying to the side. Jinchel scrunched his features and shook his head to stop the ringing in his ears. A voice came from his right.
Are you okay?
It was Jongen, the ultimate hunter. Jinchel nodded to express his gratitude. There was no time for further conversation. Stomp! The Colossus was on the move. Tack, 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 tack. The smaller statues already had the hunters surrounded.
President Choi,
the tanks called.
Provocation skills don't work on them.
What? Jongen's expressed hardened. Without provocation, the statues would instinctively go after the weakest hunters first, which usually meant the healers. With their healers down, their line of defense would soon fall apart and wouldn't last long. To make matters worse, the Colossus was raising its ginormous fist. How are we going to get out of this alive? They were trapped at the edge of the cliff, and there was only one possible way out of this mess: waking up the unconscious Hunter Sung. That damn angel had said as much. According to the statue, Hunter Sung dealt with all of them in just 5 minutes. If the angel statue had previously defeated Jinwoo because he'd been weakened by the other statues, then the current situation was dramatically different. Dozens of excellent hunters had his back. We need to wake him up. A fireball appeared in Jongen's palm. He wasn't called the ultimate hunter for nothing. The power and accuracy of his fireballs were as good as any high-tech modern firearm. This was their Hail Mary. Jongen shot the flames at Jinwoo. This type of magic might give Jinwoo a little jolt, but it wouldn't harm him. If he woke up from the impact, the hunters would have a shot at victory. Please. The fireball left a long trail in the air. Kaboom! The angel statue slid between Jinwoo and the incoming projectile, and the fireball exploded against its torso. Jongen was startled by the angel's sudden defensive move. Its face was twisted and distorted.
How dare you!
For the first time, the stone angel bared its teeth.
How dare you interrupt the king's sleep?
The king? Who was it referring to? Jongen couldn't make heads or tails of the angel's words.
What did you say?
The angel statue didn't bother replying. After all, did humans explain themselves to insects? Though it might have been stuck in its current form for various reasons, it nevertheless considered itself above humans and had no intention of explaining itself to them. Besides, if an insect was being bothersome, it just had to be squished. The angel raised a fist and then hammered it down toward Jongen's head. Whoosh! Jongen felt his heart sink, but just as he'd always told his guild members not to give up until the bitter end, he didn't turn away. A flash of light temporarily blinded Jongen right before the blow connected. Clang! Jongen blinked to see the sword of light held before his very eyes.
Hunter Cha!
Hain stood her ground as she blocked the angel's fist with her sword of light. A second later, and Jongen's head would have been ripped off. Jongen let out a tiny sigh of relief as Hain turned to him.
I've got this, so please give the others a hand, President Choi. I'm on it.
Jongen dashed off to join the fray. The angel regarded the sword encased in light with interest.
Uh-huh.
It was hard to believe there was another human besides Jinwoo who could block its attacks.
You're entertaining, very fun.
As the angel statue put pressure on its fist, Hain's knee dipped slightly. She wasn't sure how long she could hold out. but she'd give it everything she had. Ugh! A feeble moan slipped out of her full lips, and her wrist shook.
Let's see how long you can go.
The angel snickered as it turned up the heat. The stone floor beneath Haynes' feet cracked under the weight. Even using just one arm, it possessed an unbelievable amount of strength. Haynes clenched her teeth. I can't take much more of this. Realizing she wouldn't last much longer, Haynes threw all her strength into pushing aside the fist. The burst of power forced the angel back a step. It gave a pleased smile. The statue had expected her to be a short distraction, but she proved far more amusing than it had originally anticipated. It appeared there was more fun to be had.
How wonderful!
This time, it focused its power in both hands. Gulp! Haynes swallowed hard. Mana radiated in abundance from the angel's hands. If she could have, she would have run for it. But, with Jinwoo out of the picture, if she abandoned everyone, there would be no one left capable of fighting this creature. Her glare intensified. The angel, on the other hand, smiled widely and took a big step forward. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, it towered over her. It commenced attacking in earnest. As it had against Jinwoo, the angel statue delivered a barrage of wild punches. It was regretful that it only had 2 arms left, but that was more than enough for a human of this caliber. The fist shot at Haynes like a hail of bullets. Pack, 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 pack. Haynes narrowed her eyes in concentration. Sword dance. Her movement sped up significantly, and her sword drew elegant arcs in the air like she was dancing. But the blows were far too quick, and it took everything she had just to defend herself. Each strike was powerful enough to instantly end her life if she let it get past her. Clang, caw-clang, clang, 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 cling, cling, clang, caw-clang, clang, clack, clang, caw-clang, clang, clang, cling, cling, clang.
That's it. Just like that.
The angel was enjoying relentlessly bombarding Haynes with a torrent of punches that would be invisible to the average human. Haynes was pushed back little by little, and her body was drenched in sweat. Maybe it was the sweat, or maybe she'd reached her limit, but as her sweaty palms slipped, one of the angel's attacks slipped through. It was a painful mistake. The punch she had failed to block connected with her shoulder. Crack! Haynes hastily backed away and gritted her teeth, but the bone was broken. Her shoulder went numb. She lamented the loss of her left arm as it dangled uselessly.
Is that it? Is this all you got?
The angel wasted no time and rushed at her, refusing to cut her any slack. The fight between the two resumed. Clang, caw-clang, caw-clang. Haynes had barely survived these attacks using both hands, so she had difficulty fending off the angel statue with just one. As more punches connected, her body became battered and bruised. Pow! Kapow! Pow! Bones broke and flesh tore. Then came a critical blow. Wham! The statue struck her hard in the stomach, lifting her feet off the ground as she coughed up blood.
Irk!
Doubled over, she flew into the air. Her forced ascension made it impossible for her to counter. At this point, the angel lost interest in playing with the broken toy. It approached the falling Haynes to deliver the final blow and gathered the fingers of its hand to form a blade aimed at her chest. Suddenly, a blue glow swirled around her, and Haynes' eyes shot open in the middle of her fall. She twisted her body and soared around, and the angel came to an abrupt stop, leaning its head back to avoid the blade. The tip of the sword brushed past its eyes. Shink! A thin line appeared across its face. TMP. Having successfully landed an attack of her own, Hayne regained her balance and landed with both feet on the ground. Thanks to the timely healing spell, she had dodged a bullet. But what was good for one person wasn't always good for another. Whip! The angel statue spun around to locate the source of the healing spell. Shit! Hayne yelled. Get out of the way! The main healer, who had been casting spells from behind the tankers, flinched at Hayne's warning. Huh? But as he turned his head toward Hayne, he came face to face with the angel statue. Oh! The main healer's jaw dropped. Without hesitation, the angel statue did to him what he'd planned to do to Jongin earlier. Bam! The healer's head slammed into the ground. His legs twitched a few times before becoming limp. No! The hunters surrounding the angel statue rushed toward it in anger, but their foe was an unstoppable force against which none of them could stand. Pow! Pow! Each time the angel statue threw a punch, an A-rank hunter was helplessly defeated. This isn't fun. Not fun at all, humans. Once the superior being lost interest, it showed no mercy. As the number of hunters dealing damage from the rear dwindled, the line of tanks enduring the assault of the other statues, and the Colossus crumbled in no time. It was pure pandemonium. The tide had turned in the blink of an eye. Boom! The giant statue avoided the tanks and slammed its huge fist down, crushing two other hunters. Stone statues brandishing weapons encircled those remaining and began closing in on them. Damn it. Hayne quickly cut down 4 of the statues and then jumped in front of the angel. Stopping it was her priority. But the angel effortlessly blocked her blade with its wrist and kicked her in her side. Whap! Now that the angel was hell-bent on ending this, she could no longer keep it at bay. After seeing Hayne fall, Jongin grabbed Jinchul by the shoulder. Jinchul, who had just taken out another statue, jolted in surprise. I'll draw their attention, and you wake up Hunter Sung. There's nothing else we can do. What? Isn't he unconscious? Actually, he's asleep. His breathing and magic power are stable, and I don't think there's a single scratch on him. Had someone cast a sleeping spell on him? Jongin had a theory that the angel statue might be protecting Jinwoo because it was worried what would happen if he woke up. I have no idea what it means by the king's sleep, but considering how desperate the angel had been to defend Jinwoo, Jongin guessed that their fellow hunter waking would be a fatal blow. Hurry! Jinchul nodded in understanding. Jongin gathered all his magic power, and soon a large halo of fire circling his hand spat flames in every direction. The burning projectiles exploded each time they struck something. Whoosh! Whoosh! Boom! Kaboom! Boom! Bam! Naturally, the statues turned to see what all the noise was. While Jongin drew their attention, Jinchul rushed to Jinwoo. He prayed Jongin's theory was correct. While Jongin and Jinchul teamed up to rouse Jinwoo, the angel statue loomed over Hayne, who lay on the ground struggling to breathe. One side of her ribs had been broken by the kick, and as she struggled to reach for her fallen sword, the angel stepped on her arm. Crack! Ah! She grabbed her shattered arm and screamed in pain. The angel statue had already done away with those who could heal, and this female was too injured to put up any kind of fight. The lone threat among the humans was about to be eliminated. Ha-ha! The angel raised its blade-like hand once more. This is the end. Hayne continued breathing laboriously as she glared at her executioner. It was over for her, yet she refused to give up. She reminded the angel of Jin Woo-sung. During their first encounter, his eyes had burned with the same fire. The corners of the angel's mouth arched upward as it thrust its hand toward Hain's chest, but it paused before it connected. The angel statue flinched and retreated a couple of steps. A shadow soldier was hidden in the human's own shadow. Due to the rules of the chamber, said soldier was unable to emerge, but it was there nonetheless. Hain was puzzled by clear surprise on her enemy's face. It could have killed her just now, but it seemed to be hesitating. And indeed, it was. The king had placed a soldier in this human, but for what purpose? Of course, it could have been Jinwoo's doing and not the king's. But the king and the human are fused together, even if only slightly. How was the angel statue supposed to distinguish between the king's will and Jinwoo's? If the king had been the one to place the shadow soldier within Hain for whatever reason, the angel couldn't do whatever it wanted to her. The angel demanded,
"How did you find this place?"
Hain didn't answer. When the silence grew long, the angel changed its question.
"What connection do you all have with Jinwoo Sung?"
Hain kept quiet, fully aware that she wasn't obliged to answer. Realizing it wouldn't get anything out of her, the creature changed tack. The angel statue snapped its fingers, and the screaming hunters immediately went silent. As if on command, the colossus and the other stone statues paused and slowly headed to the far side of the lair. The angel statue then extended its palm, and an invisible hand drove Jinchul, who had been making his way to Jinwoo, to the ground.
Ugh!
Jinchul tried his best to resist this unseen force above him, but he couldn't move an inch. Jinchul clenched his fists and let out a huff. The angel dropped its hand. Nothing in the lair escaped its notice. Struggle as the humans might, it had them all dancing to its whim. That was the difference between it, a superior being and humans. There was no way to bridge that gap.
"I shall ask again."
The angel statue pointed at Jinchul.
"If you do not answer me this time, I shall kill that man as well as all your other colleagues."
"Fine." Hain nodded. If this helped buy them time, that would be a huge help. The angel statue stared as she struggled to sit up.
"What is your relationship to Jinwoo Sung?"
"We're friends."
"Why did you come here?"
She pondered her response before replying.
"To save Hunter Sung."
The answer brought a smile to the angel's face. Just who was saving whom now? It was clear these humans had no idea what was truly going on. The angel was mortified for suspecting that the king might have a plan for this woman. These people had come to this place for the human Jinwoo Sung. The stone angel couldn't contain its laughter. It then turned to Hain.
"I shall bless you with an opportunity." "What opportunity?" "Today, one of the noble sovereigns shall descend upon this world. I shall bless you with the opportunity to witness such a glorious moment in history."
Until the angel statue could confirm the king's intentions, it had to keep her alive. However, she was the sole exception. It didn't plan on letting the other humans go free.
"Every human except you."
Its smile had vanished, and the angel now looked downright maniacal.
"We'll die right here."
After all, it wasn't okay for these uninvited guests to be present for His Highness's majestic return. A voice from behind challenged him.
"Says who?"
Before the angel statue could turn around, a fist connected with its face. Kablam! The statue slammed into the far wall. Boom! The impact shattered the wall, sending rubble tumbling down. Before the angel statue could collapse to the floor, Jinwoo appeared in front of it and grabbed it by the throat.
"You?"
Jinwoo's other hand was on his own chest. Sure enough, it hadn't been just a dream. There was another heart beating on the right side of his chest. Jinwoo squeezed the statue's neck as he growled.
"What the hell did you do to my body?"